Hello and welcome back to a DF Retro Play. This time, we're taking a look at 3D graphics on the Super NES. But, John, you're just showing SuperFX chip. We know about that. You also know about F-Zero, a video that I did with Audie last year, who's here, by the way.
I'm here.
But we thought, what if we looked at Super NES games that didn't use Mode 7 and didn't rely on the SuperFX chip?
It's a kind of interesting thing, right? Because let's kind of go over the SNES hardware and why this isn't that easy to do.
Yeah, the rather slow CPU and the graphics chip in the SNES. I say slow, but it's slow for 3D calculations, right?
Yeah.
It's actually the graphics system of the Super NES is great for doing tile maps and character rendering and all that kind of stuff. That's what it's designed to do very quickly. But actually trying to do 3D calculations or finding other ways to simulate 3D, that's a little bit trickier. And that's what we're going to start with. So let's kick into it right now. So we're going to start with a bit of a banger. And this is sort of a contrast to what the SuperFX offers. This is Race Drivin. You may have heard of this game. I know you have.
I came from a very small rural town up in Norway, but we did have an arcade section of my little town. It was basically just a closet behind a fish and chip shop. And I remember, I think it was Race Drivin that they had. They had at least, what's the other one? Hard Drivin?
Hard Drivin, yeah.
Yeah, it was either of those that so I played the arcade version extensively because that was like one of 3 machines that they had. And I actually remember that my friend bought the Super Nintendo version because we had played the arcade version, and this was what we got. It wasn't quite the same experience at home.
No, as you can see.
And you're overshooting your jump there, so the key there is that you have to slow down a little bit because the front of your car is actually angling down. Because this game is, I think it's easy to just kind of make fun of this. It's like, it runs at 5 frames per second generously, and just it has incredible input lag. Because this is terrible. Just doing stuff that the Super Nintendo isn't supposed to really be doing. I don't even know what happened to you there. But
it runs so slow, it was hard to keep up.
It does have, the physics and the underlying code of the arcade game. So it actually is running a fairly accurate representation of it. It's just not doing it well.
Yeah, so this is basically, I selected this as our first game as an example of what happens when you try to do this on Super NES with no additional chips. And that was one of the main things about the Super NES and the NES for that matter, is that you could essentially include helper chips in the cartridges to speed up operations, handle like memory management and all that. So by default, running on the Super NES, this is probably even like a slow ROM cart, I'd imagine. I don't know.
I believe it is, yeah.
So it does not run well. I would say this is nearly unplayable, right?
Yeah,
it's not smooth. The frame rate is very low. Anytime anything complex appears on the screen like that, just like a street sign, it starts to run like Club Drive on the Jag, which is not good, by the way.
Just slightly better, but
slightly better than Club Drive. But
this was also, this was a highly lucrative license. This one, because it also came out on Game Boy. There was a prototype on NES that Cifaldi uncovered now decades ago, and it's on Mega Drive and things like that as well, I believe.
That's right.
It was everywhere. It was such a, even my dad liked this because he was just, this is realistic. It's like he's driving a real car in the arcades. Exactly. And that's part of the point.
Exactly. But here's the thing. Recently, I think it was at least two years ago, notorious SNES tinkerer Vitor Viella, I guess. Yeah. He did a conversion of this to another chip. Let's take a quick look at that. So at the beginning of the video, I specified no SuperFX chip, no Mode 7, and I think this still qualifies. This is a hack designed around the SA1 chip, which is another rather powerful chip. So it's kind of cheating in a way, but I wanted to show this as we've never featured this on Digital Foundry, and it's kind of a neat contrast between stock Super NES versus what's possible with this reprogramming effort.
Right.
Check this out. Whoa. I went a little bit fast there. But look at this.
So yeah,
it's a little bit weird, but
yeah,
look at how smooth it is now.
It is incredibly smooth, and this is still running on real hardware. I think you're running this on the SuperFX Pack Pro, right?
Yeah, I'm using a flash card to do this.
Yeah, but it's still running on real hardware. So this is, it's fairly impressive, though. I think it's slightly more uncontrollable due to the fact that it just has this weird fluidity.
Yeah, it's weird to play it.
I think this just uncovers that the underlying game isn't very good.
I think this is an interesting demonstration of what's possible.
Yeah.
It's a cool tech demo that really showcases that this is actually something that's possible for Super NES, and I actually think it's this runs a lot smoother than any SuperFX 3D games, by the way.
Yes.
I mean, the visuals are less complex, yes, but you can see that the overall performance level is a heck of a lot smoother than, like, say, Star Fox.
Yeah.
So, look at this game.
You got stuck.
I can't get past. I can't. What the heck's going on here?
Geometry is going on, John.
Well, let's just say that. Okay, there we go. We got. It's like it transitions to these different segments, and if you don't hit it just right, there's wow. This it's still slightly more controllable than Checkered Flag on the Jaguar. Sorry, Jaguar fans.
Yeah, what's going on here? Like, did Jaguar ruin your day or something?
It's an assault on the. This does not run as well as Atari carts, though.
That is true. Atari carts now available on modern consoles thanks to Atari 50.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, this, as you said, I think it's an interesting technical display. I don't think anyone really wants to play this in any frame rate, except like maybe the original arcade machine. I think. Right. Am I correct on this? That like the arcade machine had like multiple monitors? Because I kind of remember seeing pictures of that. I only had like a stand-up unit in my town, but I think I've seen pictures of like.
Yeah, you might be right. I've not actually seen one of those myself. This is a weird game. I've only seen the single monitor unit before in an arcade, and even then, it's not something I've seen often. I think the problem with this game is that it was, as best as I understand it, it was a showpiece at the time, but then around the same time, Namco also had was it Winning Run?
Right, yeah.
Which was a far more impressive polygon game, and then after that, obviously, Sega had Virtua Racing, and you know, it just escalated from there.
I mean, it was a time where 3D games changed month to month, which exactly. Incredible time to be alive and the gamer, but also ages.
This is the first game on our list, then, a polygon game that I wanted to showcase here. But the next one is actually more sprite driven, and that's what most of the games on the list are. But each of the games that we've selected here kind of try to do different things using their own techniques, which is why they're on this list.
Yeah.
So this next one is actually one that you selected.
Oh.
And it's painful. So let's get over to that. Right away though, we get that sweet Mode 7 sort of logo.
Look at that, yeah.
And that the flag back there. You know, this is Speed Racer. You know Speed Racer. Who doesn't? But
go Speed Racer.
Oh boy, here we go. So
you're in the New York Grand Prix Gang of Assassins. Yeah, I used to watch the show. It was on Swedish television in the morning. So I have some I have a near and dear place for this franchise in my heart. Ooh. Houston Springs.
There we go. Okay, so all right.
Go 3 frames per second.
So this is actually really fascinating, technically speaking.
Oh, yeah.
What they're attempting to do here, obviously, as you can see, is rather than just using a flat plane like typical Mode 7, they actually wanted to draw elevated terrain. So there's actually hills and peaks and valleys.
Yeah,
and
this, I mean, this game has your favorite kink. It has slopes.
It doesn't. Yeah, it does indeed have slopes. So they got slopes with sprite cars, and the problem though is that the frame rate here, as you can see, is exceptionally low.
It's one of the lowest on Super Nintendo. Yeah, this.
A lot of games that attempt this 3D-ish look on this generation of hardware, they're not super smooth. Like Road Rash, not that smooth, but it's significantly more fluid than this, I would say.
Right.
But I can respect what they're trying to do here with the way I actually don't know technically what they're doing here.
This always mystifies me. There is another game on the list as well. I'm sure people in the comments will have the full technical solution and tell us we're silly for not knowing it. But yeah, how they're drawing these hills and slopes, the way they're doing it always kind of mystified me, because Mode 7 famously couldn't. That's a flat plane that's being rotated. Right.
But the tile map,
whereas this is not. And we looked at Winter Gold in an earlier episode, I think, unless we just played it for our own amusement so many times. But that's one that has a really weird technical solution to all this by pre-rendering
out
sections and making it look like a seamless stage, but it's really just loading in snippets of pre-renders, and it's really interesting. This though, also interesting, but it's not a good game. And I should mention it's you had those plates out and you just ruined the other guy's race.
So if we look closely at this, then maybe it is they've it really has kind of proper 3D perspective, but it still makes me think that they're doing some kind of scanline trickery, but I can't really tell. Is it just a tile? It might be a tile map that then they're distorting somehow, on a line by line basis, because some of the pixels seem to be double or triple height.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And so they're doing some kind of, they're varying it. They also use sort of also check out
check out that jump.
I can't go back. Dang it. They're using sort of the blending mode of the system, some color math there to do sort of a smooth gradient on the edge of the grass. Look when it's fully dark here, right? If I go over the hill though, on the other side of the hill, see how it's actually lighter in the distance.
Yeah,
that is really a cool trick.
Now, see, this game I think would be more playable with an SA1 type
big time
solution where just the frame rates was in the double digits. You're going the wrong way. I can't even tell which way you're going. I can tell if you're going forward, left, right, or backwards.
I'm just trying to break apart the visuals. Yeah, the way they do the blending on the road surface somehow, it's actually pretty. This looks very different from most other Super NES games, I will say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. When I saw this and told you about it, I was more fascinated than I was, wanting to make fun of it or anything like that. It is such an interesting little piece of software, and there are other types of play in the next stages even. So it's a somewhat ambitious game.
That's true. It has platforming sections, and there's more to it than just racing. So I see what they're trying to do. I actually think in this case, it would have been smarter just to settle for Mode 7 and just go for flat racing just to make it more playable. But I think what they're trying to do here with this pseudo 3D terrain, it's pretty darn cool. So I'll give them credit for that.
I think this being, I think Speed Racer, it's famously, early anime, but I think it was more popular overseas. And I think this is also developed by American developers, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think so. Radical.
Yeah, Radical.
And it's published by, was this published by Accele?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And Games for Personality. You know which one had the most personality from Accele.
Yeah, I do know. Unfortunately, he didn't go 3D on the Super NES.
He could have.
But so this is another approach to 3D on the Super NES that I found rather interesting.
It's very interesting,
but let's continue and check out something else. So, Audie, I'm not sure you've played this game.
I have not.
Accele Brid. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
I guess it's acceleration Brid.
So check this out.
That was a very clean render, I have to say.
Indeed. So their approach was like, what if we do a kind of a 3D-ish game, but what if we take a completely different approach?
Okay, this is going to be interesting then. That's a lot of setup here. So this is very interesting. So we're not looking at a traditional racing game here, Down.
Oh no.
Wow, look at this, a cockpit view and everything. Whoa, okay. So this is doing the Super Star Wars trick.
Yes, basically.
Okay.
Well, this actually seems to be like a pre-rendered sequence of frames.
Right.
That are being drawn out one after the other and then looped, and then sprites are placed on top of it. And knowing that it's not that technically ambitious, maybe for the Super NES with compression.
Yeah.
But I thought this looked cool as heck.
Look at this. So they made a laser active game on the Super Famicom, which is just
man, I can't play it.
This is insane.
Accele Brid.
Okay, I need to look into this more. I love this about Super Famicom, and Famicom is just finding these wild, ambitiously unknown games that they aren't that great in the end, but there's like this idea behind. It's like a bad movie where It's just like there's a heart to it. I really prefer over something overdeveloped in AAA.
And it's interesting you mentioned laser active specifically, you're right. It really is that type of game.
Yeah.
Where it's basically overlaying a video effectively. It's not a video per se, but they're overlaying sprites on top of that. The gameplay sort of takes place separately from it.
Yeah.
I mean, this makes me think that the Super NES could handle Kater with enough storage.
Kater from CDI? Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, MSU1, get on it. But this is really interesting to me. The fact that they're rendering a very tiny portion of the screen because the HUD is taking a good percentage. It's also rounded.
It's rounded off.
Yeah, it's rounded off, which is really interesting. And then not too many sprites on screen at the same time. I see. It's like mostly 4 or 5 total.
Also, there's no occlusion with the background, so they just kind of fade in and out irrespective of what's happening in the background. So it's not actually connected to anything. So it really is just sort of a parlor trick, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's, at the time, I could see people being kind of blown away by this concept.
For 5 minutes.
It makes me wonder I guess the problem that makes this difficult is that you can't render that many frames out because of the amount of storage space required, right? So you can't have tracks or complex scenes. It's just got to be that looping stuff. And given that, we can switch to the next game, but I thought that was a fun sort of demonstration of a different approach to 3D.
Really cool.
So our next one here is one that I haven't actually played for quite some time, but I wanted to load it up again because it shares some similarities with the earlier Speed Racer game from what I recall, but I think they take a different approach.
This was one of those games, the Baja. This was one of those games that you and I kind of, on our late nights, just browsing video games and playing whatever, talking. Hey, was that John Madden? Or Jack Nicklaus? But this is one of those games where we usually put on and just played for 10 minutes just to kind of see it. We were so fascinated by it, and I forget what they did, but someone did make an elaborate post at some point explaining this.
Yes, and I apologize. This DF Retro Play being the casual show that it is.
We're actually drunk while doing this.
Yeah, exactly. This is just for fun to check out some cool games in here and showcase them. And yeah, as you can see, it does seem to use a technique potentially similar to Speed Racer.
Yeah.
And maybe if I check out that post, it would reveal more about how it worked in Speed Racer as well.
I mean, this is something that also came up a little bit during Super Star Wars when we did the DF Retro episode. Because in Empire Strikes Back, they were doing Hills and Valleys on the Hoth stage.
That's true.
And I think it came down to some clever scanline trickery, if I remember correctly. Right. Yeah. But this is a little bit more elaborate even than that, though.
Big time, I would say, yeah.
And I will go on defense of this game. I don't think it's actually that bad. I don't know if it has a reputation of being bad, but I've seen some people mention it as like, it's weird that this like terrible Super Nintendo racer is so ambitious. It's like, no, this actually plays fairly well.
Yeah, I gotta say, compared to a lot of the others we've seen, this is one of the, well, so far, this is the best plane by far. It's
I mean, actually... we're not putting it on a high pedestal compared to these other games, but I mean, yes, this actually we played this quite a bit at your place, and had some fun.
Exactly. I will say I don't enjoy it as much as the original off-road arcade game with the top-down. Like that is obviously the more interesting, better game, but this is still interesting and fun.
What I didn't know about Super Off-Road, though, until very recently, is a friend of the show, GameStack. They did an episode about N64 something, and apparently there was a Super Off-Road on N64, like a 3D one. I'd never ever heard of this.
Yeah, same. I hadn't heard of that either.
It's like, kind of weird. There's some of these games that seem pretty obvious for us to know about, but they escape us, and that was one of them. And I played it afterwards, and it was kind of fun. It wasn't that bad. So
yeah, those blind spot games are always interesting to sort of look at, because it's actually fun to discover something you weren't aware of, right? Because we've studied so much of this stuff, we've played so many games on these platforms, but obviously not every game. And it's fun when something unexpected shows up.
Someone was telling me recently, John, something that's kind of scared me. It was someone that interviewed me about my career and stuff like this, and our work together. And between us doing documentaries, research for books, and the amount of books that we've written for and written by ourselves, we have actually put an academic amount of research into the history of video games, and we can kind of officially be called historians and experts on an academic level at this point. And it's just like, man, you made me sound a lot more impressive than I am.
Dr. Video Games.
Dr. Video Games. Like, I have trouble putting my pants back on after bathroom breaks. So whatever you can tell me to sound better is good by me. But it just kind of scared me.
I would say you have a PhD in wrestling video games. So.
At this point, I do. Absolutely. And you'd be surprised how many times this comes up in a useful way.
That's great.
So, and same for you, your knowledge of shooters and various things like that. Just kind of these developers that you can bring up on the dot. It's strange how you think it's irrelevant, but to our lives, it's extremely useful.
It is. I agree. And it's also useful to... Wow, look at this. This is straight up out of the original off-road.
Yeah. I mean, it is an off-road game. I mean, it's the series.
Yes, it is part of the series.
Yeah.
It's just, wow.
Every time I see John Madden in the cover on the corner, I always just want to put that guy from PGA Golf there instead, the Walrus guy.
Right.
Think you can get it in mine?
Oh,
it's
no.
Just put him there instead. He fits perfectly.
Gosh, this is...
See, you're actually having too much fun playing this.
I keep going. We're stuck. It's surprisingly fun, but we should probably move on. So let's get to the next game. Remember Accele Brid?
I do remember that, yes. It was a long time ago, but I do remember.
What if you combined Accele Brid with NASCAR?
Oh, wow. That sounds like the American dream in a cupcake.
Well, I've got a surprise for you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Kyle Petty's No Fear Racing.
Hold on. I hear a bald eagle flying outside my window as we play this.
Here we go. Oh.
Oh. Off to a blinding start. Go. Wow. So, okay. So this... Wow, look at this. This is so crazy, yeah?
Yeah, this is what. So this is actually when I saw this, I was like, wait a minute. They could have done Mega Race on the Super NES.
They could have without the CD add-on even. This is insane.
Look at the clouds up there. They're like super pixelated. It makes me think that they're doing some kind of special trick with them then. Wait, why am I slowing down so much?
Because your car is broken or something. Did you? Is it a manual transmission? This is like watching real NASCAR. A baffling, unnecessary display.
I can't move. Pardon us, ladies and gentlemen.
Technical issues.
Oh wait, there it goes again.
Okay. I was about to put that bear from Simpsons on.
I'm not sure what happened. I'm not a NASCAR driver. There we go. Look at this.
Yeah. We should create our own NASCAR team. Look at that.
So this is essentially it's similar to Accele Brid, but it's a collection of individual frames, I'd imagine, that are just sort of, shown one after the other, and depending on the speed, that determines how frequently the frames change.
Yeah, right. So this is almost like, those little units when you were a kid that had like the track on a roller band. Like it was just a toy, the Tomy toys, where this reminds me of that, where like obviously if you're not moving, the background isn't, and it's all dictated by the speed you're going at. So it's kind of interesting.
Exactly.
And
so
it's not again, good,
no, it's not really that great, but it is fascinating to see what they were trying to do back then on that hardware. Like it's just another example of developers thinking outside the box. Like, how can we replicate a NASCAR event on the Super NES? Because let's face it, Mode 7 is not compatible with NASCAR. I would say
no.
You don't get any of the banks in the track, and you lose all the the stadium and the surroundings. I would have thought maybe like an overhead-ish style isometric game could have worked.
Yeah,
for the positioning and such, but they were like, "Nah, we're gonna pre-render the heck out of this," and they sure did.
I mean, it's an interesting game. It looks like it seemed to me though like completely uncontrollable. I would have to correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't seem like it had the best controls in the world.
Oh wow. Indianapolis, Denver, Tulsa, Hampton. All right, let's go to there's a night track in Memphis. Let's see what this is like. Okay. So we have this sort of like pre-race setup.
We're going to Memphis.
There we go.
Look at that. That's a night stage.
And NASCAR.
Is that what they say when they start? Is that how it works in real life?
That's just what I say.
1, 2, NASCAR.
NASCAR. Everybody say NASCAR. This is actually this is really interesting looking. Basically, it is like Mega Race in that you're literally just controlling left and right. You have no positional control, right? I mean, yes, you can accelerate and brake, but it's just slowing the rate of when the backgrounds are drawn and how close you are to the sprites. Like it's a trick, obviously, like many things in video games, but this one is especially obvious. But I gotta say, like, this is better than you would have expected.
Isn't there there's a couple of like drag race games in Japan? I think they call the 04 Champ.
Oh yeah, 04 Champ. Yep.
Yeah, they also use. I don't know if they use the same technique, but there's something weird going on there as well. They're not part of today's list, but
no. They always take a little bit of time to get into.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they're very popular. There's a lot of those.
So it looks like a Matchbox racing game to me. The cars just look like... I'm pretty sure that's what they've done as well, is that they've taken toy cars and digitized them, because you can totally tell by just the kind of size, form factor that these are toy cars, and they didn't really... So they could have easily made like a Matchbox racer with this.
All right. So enough of this. Shall we jump to our next one?
Let's do it.
So we've just finished up with the Baja, but Jalico has to get the final word in.
Oh.
So I think in the late 80s, maybe 89, Jalico released an arcade game called The Big Run, I guess. Big Run. And it seems that game got ported to the Super NES.
I never even heard of this.
But this game in the arcade used some pretty advanced sprite scaling, similar to Sega Superscaler games, right? Including like elevation changes and bridges that are similar to like Power Drift.
Yeah.
So you're not doing that on the Super NES, really. So this is what they came up with. And it does eventually have some elevation changes, I will say. But as you can see, it is...
Is that like a TV camera?
It kind of, I would say, resembles the ports of Outrun to the Mega Drive.
Right.
You know? Mm-hmm. But it's a little bit choppier than that.
Yeah, it's certainly choppier and a little bit less appealing. But yeah.
Yeah. So let's see if I can make some progress here on the big run.
It has a really awkward, like, sprite shift when you turn. Like, it just suddenly kind of...
It's a bit jarring.
Yeah.
The thing is if you look at the arcade game running, it's actually very, very fluid, and it looks amazing with some of the tricks it's doing. But this one, you know, you see what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't quite pull it off, I'd say. And that was often the case with these ports of 3D arcade games to home consoles at the time.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as, say, Galaxy Force 2 on the Mega Drive, but it's that same kind of thing where it's like, we're going to take this advanced sprite scaling game and smash it down to a system like this.
Right.
And, you know, or when I think they ported Power Drift to the ZX Spectrum or something.
They absolutely did.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before. And
we did a panel.
Yeah, that's right. That was at the panel.
EGX 2019.
Oh, man, that was fun.
That was a long time ago. And that panel is on YouTube. You can look it up somehow. Maybe I'll find a link and put it in the description.
Exactly.
But, yeah, I mean, also, there was a fascination in Japan at this time with, like, the car rally. There was several Famicom. Even Nintendo themselves did one.
You're right. That's true.
And this, I think, comes at the tail end of that fascination. So, yeah. I mean, this is a very straightforward game, though. This really teeters on the edge of, like, the 3D on SNES. It is within the spectrum of what we were looking at today. But I'd say that this, you know, it becomes so unremarkable because it really doesn't pull off anything too impressive.
It's not especially impressive overall.
No.
It doesn't run very well, and you know they're doing the typical 3D road trick, but they also have this like overlaid sort of pixel grid.
Yeah.
Sort of dither. But there you go.
Look
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's where they try to do the elevation stuff. And I mean, you can see they're basically stretching out each line,
right,
to sort of distort it.
But it looks like you're just driving into. It looks like you're just driving into a wall, basically.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't look very good, I would say.
I wonder if this would look slightly better on a CRT.
I can confirm that it does.
Yeah, okay.
But you know,
anything looks better on a CRT.
You can still see the issue. I mean, look at that. That's very weird looking.
Mm-hmm.
You should definitely check out footage of the arcade game running because it's shockingly good in comparison with all the especially those elevation changes and branching paths and building structures out of sprites. I love that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This retains none of that. So
valiant effort from Jalico. I don't know. The Germans would say Jalico, I guess. Jalico, yeah. I mean, they do say it at the beginning of Russian Beat / Rival Turfs. I think actually someone pronounces it in the bumper. So it's like I think it's Jalico.
That was such a thing, right? For Japanese game developers at the time, where they would have like a digitized voice say the name of the company.
Presented by Data East. Yeah,
exactly. Look at this.
Wow, this is like day for night.
We're trying to do headlights,
and it really doesn't work. But it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, this is definitely a case of a game that was simply too ambitious for the platform. There was just no way. So, and it's a fairly early game. I think it's 1991 or so.
Oh wow, okay, that explains some of that.
Quite early in the life of the system, and you know, early on in the Super NES's life, the variety of genres was quite staggering.
Yeah, it
seemed like developers were really interested in delivering either arcade stuff or like PC quality games, things like that. You know, and it was an interesting time for sure.
Yeah.
So with that said, we have two more games I want to look at. So let's jump to the next one.
All right.
How do you feel about the toy headquarters?
During this time, I don't feel too good about them. That's always a worrying logo to have on a Super Nintendo game.
Did you see who the executive producer was?
I did not.
It said Howard Phillips.
Wow. Look at that. It was a babe on that
here we go.
Track screen. So is this one of those games that runs in split screen? Oh, yep. No. Oh, no. John, you didn't warn me that there was going to be violence on the screen.
So
you choose murder today. Oh, my God. So this runs always in split screen and always in what?
Last lap. I would say suggesting that it runs is not entirely,
in a theoretical sense, I guess. It moves frames at a brisk pace.
It attempts to run.
Oh, this is awful.
Yeah, this is this. I saw this in the past, and I was kind of flabbergasted about what they were trying to do here because it just doesn't work.
Look at all these. Oh God, this is.
Yeah. It's bad.
It's bad all around. Howard Phillips, how could you?
Here we go. Yeah, once you start, you get off the line.
It's shocking every time.
So low. It's so low. This is the point where I consider the frame rate is just too low to be much fun.
This is why you made that Daytona video back in the day.
Yeah. Oh, I can shoot red balls. Look at that.
Yeah, that changes everything. Oh, this is so disgusting.
I mean, you see what they're trying to do, but like clearly they couldn't actually pull it off at a decent frame rate, and I feel like they should have just pulled the emergency.
There's a lot of decency that's lacking in this game overall, based on the profile pictures and the game's just functionality.
It makes me think though, like, was this also maybe the result of the publisher cheaping out, where they're like, oh, we're going to use the slowest ROM, and no chips allowed, stuff like that.
It was very expensive back in the day.
It was.
Yeah.
And sometimes that had a negative impact on the games themselves, right?
Right. I don't think, though, this running I don't think even if this ran at a good frame rate that this would be much fun. Just looking at the stage, like the track layout, this just looks bad to me.
It's pretty bad, yeah.
And I like Bubsy.
Yeah. So interesting attempt, but ultimately I would say this is a failure. This is not a good game. But our last one, well, I'll let you judge it. So that's a great logo.
I couldn't even read that. Left Field Entertainment, programmed by Panoramic. Oh, that bodes well.
This is
Steel Talons. Now, okay.
So this is a game that's this is not racing. This is a helicopter game. But it's also not like, the Strike series. This is like, what if we did a helicopter game in 3 dimensions on the Super NES?
Now, it should be mentioned in our quest for the effort to play. This obviously comes at the heels of our interview with Randy Linden, who did the Doom port and other things like that. We kind of wanted to explore more of the world of 3D on Super Nintendo without the SuperFX. And it just so happens that there are examples as well that are now racing games, but racing games predominantly were the ones trying to experiment with it.
And exactly. So I will give this this one runs very poorly, but the actual action takes place, like the targeting and everything, at a higher frame rate than movement. And what they're trying to do in this 3D space, to me, this reminds me of something like, say,
Cybermorph.
Okay, yeah. You kind of ruined it. I was thinking more like Core Designs games in the Sega CD.
Oh, okay.
They did a lot of those like 3D shooters on that system, right? And they were usually pretty darn impressive, but mostly, they relied a lot on sprites and sprite scaling and everything to pull it off. This is obvious, like trying to do polygon graphics here.
I'll join you a little bit in your Jaguar hunt today, though, because, clearly you woke up choosing violence towards that console. But when you look at Cybermorph and this game, this runs worse than Cybermorph, but it's not far from it, and it really doesn't speak well to the Jaguar's abilities, does it? When you see this on Super Nintendo running fairly stock, and then having like the 64-bit Atari Jaguar, barely improving on the concept. The helicopter though looks somewhat flat. Yeah.
I mean, Cybermorph is I would still say a pretty big step up from this in terms of visual complexity, but
sure,
it's a similar kind of idea here. And it is funny though that they're using a sprite helicopter, and the bullets are sprites that update at 60 frames per second.
Yeah, this is crazy.
But the rest of the field, obviously, with the polygons, is much slower. But actually, like for the Super NES, I would say this is shockingly playable. This is a lot smoother than, say, like hard race driving,
right?
Hard driving, race driving.
Do you think, in some ways, this is a question that I don't think I've asked you before, but in relation to this, what's interesting about the Super Nintendo when it comes out is that it launches with a lot of promise towards 3D, because you have F-Zero and you have Pilot Wings. Both of them aren't 3D, but they simulated via Mode 7.
That's right.
Do you think that this kind of created the idea that 3D was more able on the Super Nintendo for developers than it really was, or do you think it's just with time 3D was the thing to explore?
I think it's just a matter of that time period. 3D was becoming big in the arcade, and that was always the thing, is to bring arcade quality games home.
Yeah.
And developers were always interested in pushing the envelope and finding ways to, as best as they could, simulate the arcade experience. And 3D was one of those things that, when you look at the Super NES library, there aren't actually that many, right?
Right.
There's a decent number, really, but compared to the overall library, it's mostly 2D, like side-scrolling games. So I think at the time, this was viewed as a big selling point.
Yeah.
Today, they haven't aged very well, but, you look back and like, oh, man, a 3D game, that's something you don't see that often.
Right.
And I suspect that just impressed people. But I think Mode 7 was a really smart sort of conceit there, in that,
oh man, like you look at F-Zero and it just there's no contest, and that still holds up today as one of the funniest.
It's simple,
races
but
you
it's
can play.
fun.
Yeah,
will fail. But
and Mario Kart, another one, pretty timeless.
Let's do a different mission here. Requires password. Oh, dang it.
Isn't that weird? They lock you out of these missions via password.
I could check out mission 2. Let's see.
It looks very
like
similar.
It's like mission 1 all over again.
It's the same helicopter too. Yeah.
Pyramid intruder.
That's
this is like.
Well.
No, not exactly.
It proves your point, though, so much that Mode 7 was such a clever way, because you look at the last stages of Pilot Wings with the overhead helicopter mission, which I would say, as difficult as it is and nerve-wracking, because you just see those balls come towards you. It's so much more fun and fluid to play, and it gets across the same atmosphere in a brilliant way. So
it still gives you that sense of 3D movement. And parallax without actually running like this, and using sprites in combination with the Mode 7 background was usually enough to work, even if it wasn't fully convincing. But I would say, based on what we saw here today, then what are your kind of final thoughts on these games? And there are others, but most of them follow the same mold of one of the techniques we showed today.
Right. I still find this really fascinating. Like, I compared it earlier to like a fun B movie. Like, it's not the best movie or anything, but it has like a heart to it that makes it endearing to play. And outside of maybe No Fair Racing, which I will never play, there's something to all these games that I find really fascinating. And if people say that they haven't aged well and this and that might be true to some extent, but they're still very interesting to play, and they can be very fun if you just kind of sit down for an easy time. Like Accele Brid. genuinely surprised me, and that's one I want to actually look more into and maybe pick up.
Yeah, that one's worth checking out. Just, it's super weird.
Clearly.
Oh yeah, here we go. Polygons, baby.
Polygons, baby.
I guess that's enough of 3D Super NES action. Hopefully you enjoyed this tour through these random games, and let us know if you want to see this type of video for other systems. We can pick
any theme,
any theme like this. If you want a themed episode, I kind of feel like it's fun just to go through these casually, check them out, and there's lots of options out there for sure.
Right.
And next time we could bring out the Jag, or maybe wait a little bit longer for the Jag.
I think we're waiting for the Jag. I think we have plans for that. But
all right.
Yeah, any themes that fans want us to kind of explore and look at, I'm always really curious, especially when it's like technical.
Exactly.
Theatrics like this, I'm really into. Looking that up. One day we have to do like a sit down with you and me playing a lot of your retro PC games, because you have a huge history with this that I don't. And every time you play something for me, I'm always surprised. So
that's right.
Next time I'm there, probably gonna do that.
Batman Forever.
Batman Forever one more time. The return.
That's right. And so thank you everyone for watching the video. If you made it to this point, we appreciate it. And let us know what you think. And we'll see you next time.
See ya.